All right, on today's episode, we'll be talking about Keanu Reeves' second big time action movie, Speed, that Paramount Pictures straight up turned down because they were sure that no one wanted to see a movie that took place mostly on a bus. All right, everyone. Welcome to Brandon at Random Reviews. If you like listening to a guy talk about one unsystematically chosen movie at a time in weekly episodes, then look no further. To keep up with the newest content, you can find Brandon at Random Reviews on most major video and audio platforms, as well as all popular social media sites. If you enjoy this, please like and subscribe. I use internet acknowledgement as a thickening agent in my homemade stews. So, as I mentioned, the movie today is Speed, released on June 10th, 1994. Runtime 116 minutes. This movie is rated R by the Motion Picture Association of America. Budget $30 million. Directed by Jan de Bont. For the cast, we have Keanu Reeves as Officer Jack Traven, the late great Dennis Hopper as Howard Payne, Sandra Bullock as Annie Porter, and Jeff Daniels as Detective Harry Temple. This is actually one of two 1994 movies where Daniels played a character named Harry. For our casting notes, this is a long one. I'm just going to be listing a ton of names, so bear with me here. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Bruce Willis, Kurt Russell, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Harrison Ford, Mel Gibson, Tom Cruise, Patrick Swayze, Wesley Snipes, Kevin Costner, Dolph Lundgren, John Travolta, Val Kilmer, Dennis Quaid, Tom Hanks, Michael Douglas, Michael Keaton, Nicolas Cage, Johnny Depp, Jeff Bridges, and Christian Slater were considered for the role of Jack Traven. Halle Berry, Meryl Streep, Kim Basinger, and Anne Heche were considered for the role of Annie. They say Ellen DeGeneres was considered. She has denied the rumor that she was offered the role in any capacity. Robert De Niro and Jack Nicholson were considered for the role of Howard Payne, which ultimately went to Dennis Hopper. For the plot synopsis, I'll give you mine, and then I'll give you an alternate plot synopsis. Police officer gets trapped on a bus with several civilians that a madman has rigged to explode if it goes below 50 miles per hour. This is the alternate one, and I'll see if you can figure out where it's from. This movie is about a bus that has to speed around the city, keeping its speed over 50. And if its speed drops, it will explode. I think it's called The Bus That Couldn't Slow Down. The tagline, "Get ready for rush hour." Pretty solid tagline. I gotta give my props because usually they're kind of garbage. Alright guys, let's just dive right into this gosh darn plot. Okay, so in the 90s, following the surprise success of 1988's Die Hard, we got a decent amount of movies that were essentially a reimagining of that movie in different settings and scenarios. For instance, Under Siege is Die Hard on a Navy ship. The only difference is how unlikable Steven Seagal is compared to Bruce Willis. Air Force One is Die Hard on a plane, where Harrison Ford is in the lead role as a fictional president, and Speed is Die Hard on a bus with Keanu Reeves instead of Bruce Willis. All of the plots of these types of movies feature a single man, usually an authority/law enforcement type figure, who has to defeat a group of bad guys on his own with very little outside help while protecting the lives of innocent hostages. This movie has classic 90s opening credits, and I am completely here for it. These ones are projected on the walls of an elevator shaft as the camera pans down it. Apparently, this was accomplished using an 80-foot miniature version of the shaft. We start off with a guy in a suit holding a radio confronting a mystery man in a restricted area of a building about being where he's not allowed to be. The mystery man promptly kills the guy in the suit and tells him it's nothing personal, but honestly, mentioning that probably didn't do much to make that guy feel any better. We switch over to some douchey co-workers having a little back and forth as they get on an elevator, which almost immediately starts malfunctioning and dropping them down too fast and then suddenly stopping, ultimately leaving them stuck inside it. The police come to intervene and they explain that the elevator is rigged with a bomb that will explode if they attempt to open the doors. They make sure none of the other elevators are operating or accessible, except for at least one that they inexplicably leave out of thinking of until a little later. Dennis Hopper does make a pretty solid bad guy in this, and right now he's hiding in what appears to be a different elevator dressed as a repair guy and monitoring the situation close by. He was the mystery man who murdered the guy in the beginning. His name is Howard Payne, but no one knows that yet. That's a big part of the movie is figuring out who this guy is. Howard seems like he might actually not be a great guy, but I'm not going to judge too harshly just yet based on a few small mishaps. I legitimately forgot that Jeff Daniels was even in this movie before I went to watch it again. He plays Keanu's partner, Harry Temple, I guess. Reeves's character is named Jack Traven, and he's bad to the bone. He volunteers himself and Harry to inspect the bomb to see what they're dealing with. As Jack and Harry begin accessing the elevator shaft, Howard can overhear what they're doing from his elevator, and the hostages also hear them and are alarmed when they identify themselves as LAPD because they kind of thought that this was just an equipment malfunction or something. Harry poses a hypothetical scenario to Jack, asking him what he would do to resolve a different situation where the bad guy was in a standoff with Jack and using a hostage as leverage, and Jack says that he would deliberately shoot the hostage in a way that wouldn't kill him, but would take them out of the equation. Harry is deeply disturbed that Jack would be so callous as to even non-mortally shoot a hostage, but I suppose haters are gonna hate. You do you, Jack. Jack reveals a gut feeling that the terrorist intends to blow the bombs even if the police meet his demands, so him and Harry head to the roof and Jack says he wants to take the hostages out of the equation. Jack decides to sneakily hook a cable to the elevator from the top of the shaft to prevent it from crashing to the bottom if it is in free fall again, and I'll be honest, I don't feel too good about the cable setup they're using, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Shortly thereafter, Howard realizes that they're up to something and blows the bomb, so the elevator drops and the cable manages to hold, at least initially. But for some reason, it was tethered to a piece of equipment on the roof, and it gives way under this abrupt tension just to add suspense. This is one of those annoying moments where I think, hey, I don't know if that equipment secures that were anchored into cement would fail that easily, and if they would, maybe Jack wouldn't have used it for the cable to actually be tied to, but he acted positive it'd be okay when he did it. Jack is quickly getting the hostages out of this elevator to make sure that they're safe, and this last lady on the elevator is being such a wuss and acts like she doesn't realize the gravity of the situation. So, in fear, she refuses to be rescued for like a laughably small span of time before taking Jack's hand after a little bit of convincing. Just as Jack saves her, the elevator and equipment free fall all the way down the shaft. In the aftermath, Harry and Jack ascertain that the terrorist must be close by and could be hiding in one of the freight elevators that they failed to check before this happened. And the guy's probably just pulling the strings from there is what they're thinking, so they go to see if he's still in there. Eventually, as Howard realizes that the two of them are above his elevator, he fires multiple shots at them blindly through the ceiling, and Harry eventually falls inside with Howard. Then Howard turns on the elevator, so it begins climbing, and Jack is forced to jump into the car so that he doesn't hit his head at the top of the shaft. There's a big standoff when they get off the elevator, with Harry being Howard's hostage, and he's threatening to blow Harry up. Harry tells Jack to shoot him, so he fires a shot into his leg, and it causes him to fall out of Howard's arm, eliminating Howard's leverage in the situation. Suddenly, Howard makes it look like he blows himself up after Jack believes that he finally has him captured, but shortly after it's revealed that Howard is still alive with a new vendetta against Jack, specifically as he secretly watches an award ceremony where Harry and Jack are being given medals. Jack is left on his own while Harry is injured, and the two of them share in the relief that they survived the madman thinking he's dead, but for some reason Harry is trying to give Jack a hard time about shooting him, despite Harry literally telling Jack to shoot him in the moment. So, what's that about? As Jack is leaving a store, a city bus blows up in front of him and he answers a payphone that is ringing nearby, and it's Howard taunting him by telling him he's alive and was behind this bus explosion. Howard reveals that he's furious about Jack thwarting the elevator plot that he had planned 2 years for. He goes on to explain that there is a bomb on another bus that will become active when the bus exceeds a speed of 50 miles per hour, but after it exceeds that speed, if the bus falls back below 50, key that will detonate the bomb. Of course, Howard has to tell Jack what bus is rigged and where it's located because if he didn't tell him, that would be no fun and there would be no movie. Oh, also, Howard has access to cameras on the bus, but we don't really find that out for sure until later. And he says that Jack is not to attempt to get any of the hostages off the bus. I don't know much about city buses, but is it expected that they would even go over 50 miles an hour regularly? I thought they were mostly on city streets, but I could be way off on that. Maybe they go fast, especially like in Los Angeles. I don't know. Jack rushes to reach the bus on the freeway and initially approaches it when it slows down for a traffic backup. But naturally, everyone on the bus just thinks that Jack's a crazy person and they don't realize he's a cop. The stakes are high as Jack commandeers a car whose driver slides into the passenger seat and rides with him to pursue the bus. All the while, the bus is nearing 50 miles an hour. Jack is trying to convince the bus driver, Sam, that he's for real and there's a bomb on the bus, but he realizes the bus has somehow already gotten to go over 50 miles an hour, so he can't have the bus slow back down to let Jack on board. So Jack uses the driver of the commandeered car's cell phone to call Harry and tell him that Howard is still alive and what's happening with the bus. So naturally, Jack is forced to jump onto the bus from the car, and once he gets on board, he's immediately met with hostility from a lot of the passengers, especially one man who pulls a revolver on Jack, fearing that Jack has come to arrest him, but Jack has no idea who this guy is or what he's even done. As Jack tries to defuse the situation, one of the other passengers takes it upon himself to try to take out the guy with the revolver, resulting in Sam, the bus driver, being shot accidentally, and a passenger named Annie has to take over driving the bus and keeping it above 50. Annie promptly reveals that she's taking the bus because she has a suspended driver's license for speeding. Jack lifts the floor panel and has a passenger relay information by cell phone to Harry about what the bomb looks like underneath them. Harry ascertains that the first thing Jack sees is a decoy, but Jack quickly notices the real bomb with a digital readout of the bus's speed as well as a cheap gold watch and a ton of C4. When Jack describes this, Harry tries to put together why the bomber would change his choice of bomb design components, since I guess most of these terrorists stick to their similar familiar designs most of the time. Annie is forced to leave the freeway when she sees a traffic jam and hits a bunch of barrels full of water, but keeps rolling onto slower speed limit roads. Police are aware of the situation and are attempting to facilitate clearing all roadways for the bus to have safe passage, and eventually they have a team of cruisers escorting them. Jack and Annie introduce each other, and Annie asks about why all of this stuff with the bomb is happening, and Jack explains that there's a madman looking for money, and that if Jack can thwart him again, he'll just keep doing it again and again until he gets what he wants. Harry is working to try and figure out who this terrorist is by ascertaining that he might be on some kind of government assistance like disability or something. Police pull up alongside the bus and talk to Jack from the door, and they give Howard the info to call Jack, who convinces Howard that Sam must be gotten to a hospital to tend to his gunshot wound. Howard initially refuses, but Jack wins him over by reminding him that there are more than enough other hostages, and Sam could realistically die without medical attention. So Jack manages to give Sam over to the police while the bus is moving. After Sam is safe, a panicked passenger named Helen, played by amazing character actor Beth Grant, attempts to get off the bus as well, but Howard sees this happening and decides to blow a smaller bomb isolated to the door area, killing Helen and throwing her under the bus to be run over by the wheels. Annie tells Jack that she's scared and she thought that the door bomb was the real bomb, and she's super distraught about what happened to Helen. Jack tells her that if Helen would have gotten off the bus, the terrorist would have detonated the bomb and just killed everybody, so it's not obviously ideal that Helen had to die, but it's better than that. Suddenly, the police reveal that the route they've taken the bus on is for some reason heading toward a bridge, which is under construction, and a few miles ahead of them, there is a 50-foot gap with no bridge between. So Jack decides to have Annie just gun it as fast as she can in hopes of making the jump if there's enough of an incline. Now, looking at this situation, I am no physicist, but there is absolutely no way, with the way they present this to us, this bus is ever making this jump with that big of a gap. Like, even if there was a small incline right before the jump, there wouldn't be enough momentum to make it across, from what I can tell, especially not at the speeds they're going. I remember even thinking that was a stretch as a small child watching this and being like, how could that even come close to happening? Of course, with over 45 minutes left and this being a Hollywood blockbuster, they somehow make the jump. I have more to share about that when I get to the trivia section, by the way. Shortly after making the jump, Jack has an idea and has Annie turn into the airport. Clearly, this strategy is to use the runways and wide open space to allow the bus to keep moving at the right speed with a minimal chance for disruption. But they also do show that, like, damage happened to the tires because they went over those spike strips that they have to like prevent people going in the wrong way. Howard calls Jack and begins pressing him about getting the money he wants, and he explains his resentment toward dealing with negotiators and makes some comment about not being treated right in regard to some injury to his hand. Howard permits Jack to get off the bus, and Jack has the police help him get under the bus to dismantle the bomb, which kind of had me wondering in the moment, why? Why would Howard go along with letting Jack off of this bus? They get Jack under the bus by using what is essentially a heavy duty metal mechanics creeper, like the things that they slide under cars with, that is tethered to the back of this truck with a cable driving in front of the bus. This idea doesn't make much sense to me. It seems like it would be nearly impossible to do this and grapple with the turns of the bus and maintaining the right speed and all that, but of course it makes for a very intense sequence. In the midst of all this, Harry and company figure out that the terrorist is in fact a man named Howard Payne, a retired bomb squad police officer, and they head to his location very cavalierly. Suddenly, everything goes haywire with Jack's creeper, and the cable breaks, and he's forced to use his brute strength to hold onto the bus and get himself back inside it. Annie is, of course, very upset that Jack came so close to death because she's clearly falling like madly in love with him in all of this excitement. The police make it to Howard's place, and I feel like more seasoned moviegoers will immediately assume that Howard is not in there at all and that there will be some kind of explosives rigged to blow. You are totally right. That is exactly what happens. Of course, Harry and his team break into the house. They have just enough time to realize the place is rigged to blow up, and the whole house explodes with them inside. Jack gets a call, assuming it's Harry with good news, but it's Howard telling him that Harry died, and Howard really hammers home that the gold watch on the bomb was his retirement gift from when he left the police force. As Jack is stricken with grief and Annie has to bring him back to focus, Jack suddenly realizes that Howard has a camera on the bus that allows him to see what's happening above and beyond what he can see in the news coverage from like the helicopters and stuff, but he seemingly doesn't have any audio to go on. Jack and the police devise a plan with the local news team to have everyone on the bus stay still and act normal for a while as long as they can. Plan is to record a loop of them acting normal and sitting still and somehow push that looped footage to Howard's feed to make him believe nothing is happening while they use that time to evacuate the passengers safely off the bus before Howard can even get wind of what's going on. But I'm going to be annoying and point out that there's no way he'd believe this for long enough, and I would think he would like call Jack at the very least while they stand still for all that time. It would just be suspicious if it was like multiple minutes of them just standing still. They're not making any turns, they're not doing anything, nobody's really swaying or anything. It's just, it would be suspicious. As the last of the passengers get off the bus, the tires blow while Jack is still on and Annie is still driving. They rig a sort of makeshift cruise control for the bus, and Jack and Annie lay on top of each other on the floor panel and escape by sliding out underneath the bus before it crashes and explodes. Annie has to be consoled by Jack as she reels from all of the trauma of her intense day. When Howard calls the police about getting his money, Jack realizes that Howard doesn't even know what happened with the bus, and they could potentially catch him instead of revealing everything. Howard is very smug and satisfied at what he assumes is a success with his big plan, but upon closer examination of the footage from the bus, he notices the jump when the video loops back to the beginning of the recorded footage. They wait to try and catch him at this garbage can where they were told they needed to drop the money for him. We see Howard come and kidnap Annie while wearing a police uniform to convince her that he's actually taking her to safety. Jack realizes something is up because no one is coming to the trash can where the money is, and when he has his men activate the transmitter inside, they discover the money has already moved from the location in the trash can and has somehow gotten farther away, and they realize there's a giant hole under the trash can that was used to get the money out. Jack finds Howard, who has Annie rigged up with explosives in the tunnels underneath, and Howard flees with her, and Jack goes after them as they board a train, and Howard handcuffs her to a pole in one of the cars. Jack has to pull open the train doors to get on board while it's moving, and Howard gives Annie the detonator to her bomb and has her hold it, and he tells her that if she lets go of it, the bomb will go off. As Jack tries to get to them, Howard hears Jack on top of their car and goes to open his money bag, which is rigged with an ink device that goes off, and of course Howard becomes furious because his money is destroyed. Howard takes the detonator with him and fights with Jack on top of their train car. As Howard sits atop Jack, pinning him to the roof, Jack notices the various lights hanging that pass above them close to the roof every few seconds. In Howard's arrogance, he taunts Jack about how great his plan was, but Jack pushes Howard upward and causes Howard to collide with one of the lights hanging down, which seemingly kills him. Now, with the detonator, he goes down to find Annie still handcuffed to the pole, but he has no key to unlock the handcuffs and attempts to break the pole loose to free her instead, but it doesn't work and the train can't be stopped. So Jack and Annie basically have to try and survive the crash with this intense momentum. To be clear, Jack totally could have saved himself and just let poor Annie die, but that's not really his style. Their car crashes out from the end of the tracks and onto the street, and Annie shows her appreciation that Jack didn't leave her there, and she starts smooching him a lot, which is of course pretty yucky. And then we roll credits. So, trivia for this movie: John McTiernan passed on directing this film because he reportedly felt it was too similar to the movie Die Hard, which he directed. Rennie Harlin and Quentin Tarantino were offered the chance to direct this film, but turned it down. Tarantino later named the film as one of his 20 favorite films since 1992. Michael Bay desperately wanted to make this his feature-length directorial debut, but because his only major experience at the time was in commercials and music videos, they elected not to roll the dice by choosing him to direct. 10 buses were used in the making of the film. Each one had 2 steering wheels, one for Sandra Bullock and the other for the stunt driver, who was more often than not located on the roof of the bus. For the bus jump sequence, a ramp was built. The bus started from about 1 mile back and accelerated toward the ramp, but by the time it hit the ramp, it reached a speed of 61 miles per hour. It traveled 109 feet, and its front wheels reached an altitude of 20 feet off the ground, which was higher than anyone on set had anticipated. Because of this, the cameras were not placed correctly, and the top front part of the bus goes out of frame when the bus reaches the maximum point of the jump. The film literally ran out of money before it was completed. When the film was first previewed for an audience, the subway scenes were animated storyboards. The audience loved them all so much that the studio came up with the funds to shoot the scenes properly. The film's ending was actually inspired by the 1976 film Silver Streak, apparently. I've never seen it. I think Gene Wilder is in it. Joss Whedon was brought in a week prior to the start of production on the film to do rewrites and improve the dialogue. Through a series of talk show appearances, Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves revealed that both of them had developed crushes on each other during filming but never acted on them, which is kind of heartbreaking. So that bit I mentioned at the beginning of the episode about Paramount turning this down because they didn't think the audience would like being on a bus the whole time is true, but what I didn't mention is that after they turned it down, the movie was rewritten to include the elevator scenes at the beginning and the train scenes at the end, and then 20th Century Fox signed on to make the movie. So basically, it was just a movie on a bus the whole time, and it needs those beginning and end parts to kind of give you a little break, to be fair. So on to info and ratings. Opening weekend, 14.5 million. Worldwide gross, 350.4 million. IMDb rating, 7.3. Letterboxd, 3.7. Rotten Tomato Critics score, 94%. Rotten Tomato Audience score, 76%. Personal rating, 4.5 out of 5 stars. Praise for this movie. This movie really has a great fast pace and really keeps your adrenaline pumping the whole time. The cast is actually pretty phenomenal, even when it comes to the smaller roles. The entire premise itself just makes for a potentially entertaining movie, and it delivers on that pretty well. For criticism, I will say that although Keanu has grown on me a lot over the years, he still does have very little range, and some of his performance is a little flat here. Although I realize it is a big budget action movie and is likely to go a little nuts with certain sequences, some of the sequences require too much of a suspension of disbelief for me. It's just too much. It's like you could make something realistic out of this. Like it doesn't have to be as crazy and unbelievable as it is. So, all in all, this is still incredibly enjoyable and was a nonstop thrill ride with little to no slow spots throughout that still holds up over 30 years later. All right, everyone. Thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day. Bye now.